Today I'm going to do something different. I'm not reading a news article, I'm just going to tell you a story from my real life. And the reason I'm doing this is that I find it interesting that if I tell this story to a European, they will usually respond with, well, what's the problem? Why are you upset? And if I tell the story to an American, they will say, well, this is outrageous. How does your country allow something like this to happen? It's very interesting. So let's start with the beginning. I have a fiance, as you guys know, and she's a Christian woman from the countryside. Doesn't really enjoy life in an apartment. We want to start a family, so we decided let's buy a house. And we go out, we look at different options, and I'm looking for something within the $90,000 price range. So not something a lot, not something too small. I found something at the outskirts of the town. It's got a gazebo. That's really cool, right? So I'm going to go like, okay, well, I want to buy this. And for the first time ever, I have to deal with the banks. Now, I used to sort of deal with the banks in the past when I renovated this apartment. I asked my dad to make a loan. And I paid him for the loan that he made for me. Because it's kind of difficult to explain to the banks what it is I do. Which is a hurdle that I came up with right now. It's like, well, what do you do? Well, I make YouTube videos. It's like, okay, but how does that make you money? It's like, people donate to me. It's like, why do people donate to you? Are you a charity? No. So I'm trying to explain to this, I think she was like 50 or 60-year-old woman, what it is I do, and eventually it just snaps, and like it's like video chatting, but I don't take the clothes off. And she's like, yeah. So finally, she understands what I do, and then she asked me, like, did you have a credit before? And I swear to God, like, when I said no in the bank, that I've never had a credit before, everyone looked at me with the stink eye. It's like, what are you doing here? How is this person alive? 34-year-old without a credit. Never? You never had a credit. Never. And I'm like, no, it's almost like I sinned, it's like a sin in the cathedral of banking or something. It's like not to have a credit. Like, did it even have a credit card? It's like, no. Never had a credit card. I have a debit card. Like, the only time if I want to buy something, I save money for it. I'm not even kidding. Like, there were things that I wanted to buy, like this computer. I saved money for it for 2 years. I remember, like, when I was a kid, and the first game that I wanted to buy, which was Warcraft 3, because I wanted to have the multiplayer, I spent half a year, like 6 months, walking all the way to school and saving the bus money so that I can afford to buy the game. And you might be like, well, what's so big in that? The school was 10 kilometers away, all right? Sometimes it was raining, sometimes it was snowing. I didn't care. I had to do that in order to save money for it. Like, I'm not the type of person that likes to lend money. I don't like to feel indebted to someone else. It's so good to be financially free. Well, I guess like that's going to end soon, but right. So I told them I don't have a credit, and they're really bewildered by that. It's like, but do you pay your taxes to the government on time? It's like, yeah, like I showed them papers, like everything is fine. They want to see like if I pay my accountant on time. It's like, okay, like all of that checks out. And then, like, the way it works is that I have to give a 15% down payment on the house. And the rest the bank covers. So that's the mortgage. And this is where the thing happens. This is where the actual story starts. I go with a down payment to the person that I want to purchase the house from. And they say, no, they can't accept it because it's illegal to accept that. Like, I have to give it in his bank account. I'm like, that's weird, like I never dealt with sums of money that were that high, so I'm like, okay, like I think it was like 6,000 euros or something. I said, all right, well, I want to buy a house and the law doesn't allow me to give you the money in hand. Like, no, you need to go to the bank. Perfect. I get his bank account number, I go to the bank, and when I start putting the cash on the table and I stack the bricks of cash, like, everyone in the bank looks at me like I'm some sort of savage coming from some forgotten jungle and meeting the Christian missionaries for the first time. I think like the equivalent would be if you go to a supermarket to purchase clothes and you offer a golden ingot in exchange. It's the same like going into a very prestigious dinner where you have a lot of business contacts there, and you start eating without the fork and a spoon, and like that's literally the look that I got from everyone. Like for the first time ever, I feel like a social justice activist talking about prejudice and how I'm being discriminated because I'm actually paying with cash. And like this really annoyed me because like, why do I pay with cash? It's like there's multiple reasons for it. Number one, it's a lot easier for me to save money if I have them in cash in my house, under the mattress, as they say. It's a lot easier because when they're online and when they're on a credit card, it's the psychological effect of it. Like you don't see how much money you're spending. You don't get like the same vibe like when you see the stacks of paper going lower and lower. It's a lot more tempting to buy stuff off the internet. Like in real life, I don't really have that many stores around me, so I don't really spend that much cash. But like if it's online and I see something nice, maybe a video game on Steam or something like that, it's a lot more tempting for me to purchase it. And then comes like the ideological reason. What do I get if the cash is in the bank? Like what do I get if my cash is in the bank? Like do you know how ridiculous it is? Like in order to gain minimum wage from interest by having your money in the bank, you would need to deposit, because I did a calculation, like something in the lines of $200,000 just to get like a minimum wage from income per month. It's like, why would I do that? Like if the banks aren't willing to offer me anything for having my money in the bank, then what's the point in having them in the bank to begin with? It's like convenience. Okay, but I don't want the convenience. Like it's more convenient for me if they're in my house. And not to mention, it's so ridiculous. Like I actually think it's safer in my house than in a bank because the European Union was very insistent, like surprisingly so for anyone that actually follows European legislation. They were very insistent that in the case of a bank going bankrupt, then the bank can take your money away. Like seriously, like no other business can do that. Like imagine if you pay up front for a construction company and they go bankrupt and they seize your assets and your house. Like no other business does that. The banks are an exception. All right. Now I'm pretty sure that this will never happen. Like I'm pretty confident that banks won't go belly up and take my money. But it's the principle of it all, like the audacity that European Union has to force other countries that wouldn't want this to be forced to implement this legislation that the banks can seize your assets. So like I don't want to have it. It's like, okay, that's fine. If that's the spirit of the law, then this is the spirit of the consumer. Like last time I checked, it's still a capitalist society, right? Like the consumer can still decide what to do with his money. But anyway, right? So no, like everyone was just what? And they start asking me, it's like, well, why am I paying in cash? Where do I have this cash from? And it's like, it all checks out. Like you can go into the papers and look, like every single month, whenever I get paid by Google and by Patreon and the PayPals and whatever, every single month I just take my cash out. Like even if I have to pay a commission, and that's another thing, like I have to pay a commission every time I decide to take my own money out. There's a limit on how much money I can take per day. I've never reached it, but like I know it's there. And what's fascinating about it is that when you want like to pay someone with cash, you're not allowed. Like the government here, and this is where all Europeans think that this is normal. Like the government has a limit on how much cash you can pay someone in hand. So the limit I think is $1,000. Like if I want to buy a TV that's $1,200, I have to pay for it with card or bank transfer. You can't just give the money into the hands of the seller. What? Why? What? So like if I sell a car, it has to go through a bank. Like I need to make a bank account if I want to sell a car, right? If I want to purchase a car, same thing. And again, like imagine what happens when you're purchasing a house or selling a house or something like that. And it's like Europeans are like, well, this is in order to avoid fraud. It's in order to avoid people, skimming the government for taxes. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, like, why would you be against the government saying every single person needs to carry a smartphone nowadays? Every single person needs to have a smartphone on them at all times, so that if a crime happens, it's a lot easier for the cops to check your movement and see where you were that day and what you did, to investigate suspects. It's a lot easier for the cops. Like every single smartphone should have a tracking app. Smartphones that don't have tracking apps should be illegal to sell, and every single person should carry the phone on them at all times. Like, what? Why would this be a problem? Like, seriously, if you're with this mentality and you're thinking that, okay, all the money needs to go through a bank, then why would you be against people carrying cell phones on them at all time? You know, even the microphone should be open at the cell phone. Like, the cell phone should be recording everything you say anyway. It's a lot easier for the cops to catch criminals, right? Creates a safer community, doesn't it? I mean, like, these people that constantly value safety over liberty, it's like, why do you want a liberal society then? Why don't you want a dictatorship? Like, everything you want is going to be provided there. You know, might as well go to a maximum security prison, because you're going to get all the safety there, unless you're Epstein. You know, if you're Epstein, you're not getting the safety. But anyway, you know, like, that's me going in a tangent. It's just like, the government is forcing people to work with banks. That's what really annoys me of it. You know, like, it's not a choice to, like, they're above other businesses, is what I want to say. And when you look at the United States, it's even more obvious. Like, the bankers usually get to keep their profits because it's a capitalist society, right? So they get to keep the profit. But if a bank is about to go bankrupt, then they get bailed out by the taxpayer. So it's like this weird form of socialism where if your business is failing, you get bailed out by the government. But if your business is doing well, you get to keep the profits. Well, like, why is this a thing? And it's the same here. Like, here it's even worse. It's not that the government is going to bail out the banks. No. The clients, like the people that are forced to have their money in the banks, are going to bail out the banks. I mean, it's so ridiculous here that if you want to hire anyone for any job, you have to pay his wage in a bank account. Like, everything, every single transaction, everything has to go through the banks. Like, you got no choice in it. And it's kind of interesting that there's, as far as I know, I don't think there's a single Romanian bank with Romanian capital. Maybe Czech Bank and Transylvania Bank, but it's not 100% Romanian capital. Like, all the other banks are foreign. Surprisingly, there's no German bank. Like, there is no German bank in Romania, but like there's a lot of European Union type banks, you know? Very, very interesting why they get such special treatment that no other Romanian business gets. In fact, no other business in the country gets this treatment, you know? Like, you're forced to work with them. And you can't do transactions unless it goes through. It's bizarre. But anyway, you know, like, maybe I'm wrong. I'm really curious why you guys think. Because, like, every time I tell this to a European, they find it normal and natural. And it's like, why are you complaining about? Like, even my mom was like, oh, why did you pay in cash? Like, you shouldn't pay in cash. It's like, what? You're acting like an elderly person, you know, that doesn't know how to do bank transactions. Just use the internet like normal people, like the new generation. It's like, it's not that I don't know how to do it. It's just that I don't see why I should. Like, I'm not, like, if for me it's more convenient to have cash in my house, why are you forcing me to go online? And then it's the ideological reason as well. Like, if the banks were to give me some income for having my money deposited there, you know, like even a 1% or 5%, like how much do you get? Like 0.0.1% if you have your money in the bank? Like, how much is the interest rate? Yeah, because I know the interest rate when you loan from them. Oh, when you loan from them, it's like, muy interesante. But when you deposit there, it's like, and no wonder, like, they don't care, because like almost everyone is forced to deposit there now, right? So the person that actually would want to deposit to a bank in order to get some nice interest is not going to get anymore, because the government is forcing everyone to do it. Not to mention, like, do you know how much power this gives to the banks? Like, imagine if in Romania you'd have a bank that says 2 + 2 = 5, and anyone that disagrees doesn't get to have a bank account. You know, like in America, like there are a lot of ideological banks in the United States which are taking ideological stances, and they are not just to make profit. They now have a morality to uphold, and people they consider immoral gets their bank accounts taken away. Well, in my country, if that would happen to anyone, that person is fucked. Like, that person would be more lucky if they get in jail and in prison rather than have this done to them, because now they can't get a job, because without a bank account it's illegal to hire them. Now they can't buy anything that's above $1,000 because all these transactions have to go through a bank. Now they can't sell anything that's over $1,000. Like, that person would just be cut off from the society entirely if the banks would stop dealing business with them. Maybe there's some legislation that protects Romanians from this. I don't know. Like in the United States, I've seen it happen. There are a couple of people. What's her name? Like Laura Loomer. Like she can't even get a Uber, right? She doesn't have a PayPal. Like there are other people that have Mastercards turned away from them. Chase Bank deplatforming them, and it's like, okay, well, imagine if that happened in a country where every single transfer needs to go through the banks. Wouldn't that be interesting? Let me know what you think. And yeah, I'm sorry for this style of video. I just wanted to get off my chest because I don't understand like why is this. Like, it's kind of funny because most people don't even know about this. Like they're unaware that this is even happening here. When I told the story to other Romanians, they're like, "Oh, it's illegal to pay." Like, what do you mean? And when they look at the legislation, it's like, "Oh yeah." So when I have to give the down payment of 10% for my house, I have to give like a written consent form that I talk about why I'm spending the money and what I do with my own money. It's like, it's my money. It's my money. Why do they care so much? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.